Thanks again for staying with the Africa News Network First Fast Live. Our top story this half hour. The Western Cape ANC's Provincial Executive Committee has disbanded the party's Cape Town Metro leadership, and the decision has shattered the already thin veneer of unity that shielded the deep divide in the provincial ANC. Nasipi Same has more.
My apologies for keeping you guys waiting.
With just days to go for the National Policy Conference, the ANC is scrambling for unity. Its Western Cape unit is in tatters. At an emergency press conference called on Sunday, regional leaders denounced the decision to disband the Dula Omar REC. On Monday, it was time for the Provincial Executive Committee to shoot down the charges.
In a show of defiance, they didn't allow PEC members to attend the Dula Omar, again showing disrespect for our provincial structures and leadership.
The region's disbandment follows divisions sparked with the Dula Omar's preferred candidate, Songezo Mjongile, failed to make it as the provincial secretary 2 years ago.
We've got weak leadership in the Western Cape. Very, very weak leadership. We told them that we are expecting them to lead us, but instead of leading us, they are dividing us. A few group of people organized by the provincial secretary. Firstly, they went to Touch and drank in Touch, and after that they convened a meeting 2 a.m. Whilst we are sleeping, people are continuing with the meeting.
There was a meeting on Saturday, a PC meeting. It was adjourned, and a few people at night came on such an important matter to want to dissolve the region. It's impossible.
Fires Jacobs says the dissolution follows the party's poor showing in last local government elections. But regional members see the move as part of a larger plan to send preferred delegates to the ANC policy conference on Friday. As the regional members choose camps, the friction between the two groups is getting more intense.
I think it's time that analysis be made by the NEC on the role of Hanekom, the role of Snyman, and the role of for East Jacobs in the context of trying to dislodge the ANC from power come 2019. I think these comrades are deliberate in making sure that the ANC nationally lose power.
He continues to insult the organization. He continues to undermine the Secretary General. He continues to create confusion and problems in our organization. He's also one of the people that deliberately misleads ANC members.
The ANC's biggest regional executive committee in the Western Cape does not exist anymore. All eyes will now be on the National Executive Committee when it meets to decide their fate. With Nasipi Same, Bureau Report, ANN7.
As always, the lines are open, or you can join us on social media. Joining us live in studio is Alowa Baleni and Tsepo Khadima, political analyst, and later on Lionel Adendorff, ANC chairperson of the PEC subcommittee in the Western Cape. That's the Provincial Executive Committee. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. Just looking at the importance of this particular spat, public spat in the Western Cape ANC leadership, certainly something that the party can do without.
The party actually can ill afford to have any more divisions as it currently is the case. But, you know, the Western Cape, we have to bear in mind that it's actually one of the smaller provinces. And one of the reasons why it's a smaller province is because over the last number of years, the ANC has not been able to garner mass support on the ground and to really mobilize for membership. Now, every time that they have tried to send in people there from either Lituli House or elsewhere to try and fix the problem, they've only just made it worse. So what you are seeing is that they can actually ill afford this particular decision, more so on the eve of a policy conference and on the eve, much more closer to the national conference. But also what is more puzzling is that I couldn't help but notice that Derek Hanekom has been deployed in Western Cape. Now, I don't know, I would have thought that the ANC would have known better to have applied the grandfather rule. You can't have him as the person who is chairing the disciplinary committee of the ANC, now himself being on the cold front. Now, with him being in the cold front as the situation is, on the cold face as the situation is, unfortunately, I think it's just going to taint him. It's going to cloud his judgment, and it will remove his impartiality, which is a requirement for the position that he holds. So I don't know. I think that this they can ill afford. The question is that as they're disbanding the leadership now, question arises: who are they actually sending to the policy conference from Western Cape and from this region that they have disbanded? And if they so do, what actually policy positions are they going to be taking there? Because I would think that the decision to disband was not a spur of the moment thing. It means that the situation must have been brewing over a period of time, and they've only just decided to take the decision now. And in doing so, I can't see how it will be helpful to the ANC. I think, if anything, this is just one of the blows that are self-inflicted.
Yeah, but how then do they contain it? Because we know that the democratic atmosphere, to its own fault and demise, sometimes doesn't work in favor of the party, where people are given a choice of which delegates they'd rather have them represent. And if that list is then vetoed, we see this kind of a backlash. Alowa, how then can the party going forward manage this whole candidacy and delegates list?
I think it's to the viewers. It's a tough one. It's a tough one because, I mean, on the ground, you would hear allegations that the masses are saying as long as somebody's name is not on the list, therefore we are not interested. Then you hear leadership saying these people are only interested only if a certain individual that they prefer is on the list. So it is something that is, I think last time they did deploy, like my colleague here said, that they deployed people from the Tulu House to try and go and really see and sit down and check what is happening there. I'm not so sure what the outcome has been there, but it is something that they are failing to contain. The province is always collapsing. In terms of the ANC is not a very popular, it's not very grounded in that province. So I don't know how they can do it, and the timing is actually very wrong, because you would expect that at this particular point in time, they should be solid and moving towards to the policy conference with one voice, and then thereafter, obviously, to the elective conference. But if at this particular point there's no harmony, then you can tell that it is a house on fire.
Yeah, and again, before it even makes it into the public space, we know because of democracy, again, you have freedom of speech. You can call your own conference, as is seen with the former chair of the Western Cape, Marius Fransman, at any given point without provocation, wanting to give his side of the allegations of impropriety, or rather sexual misconduct. That continues to damage the image of the party, and that hasn't been able to be reined in.
Well, they wouldn't be, but maybe I want to go back a little bit. 1997, the African National Congress took a resolution to establish political education, because at that point in time, membership of the ANC was starting to grow, following the unbanning and the consolidation and the bringing together of the exile, the Robben Islanders, as well as the civil society formations that were led largely by UDF, SACC. So if you look at that period, was the question of, we have to introduce political education. That was the thinking of the conference in Mafike. You have to introduce political education simply so that any person who is said to be a member of the ANC, you would not have a question mark in terms of their understanding of the ethos, the values, the mission, and what really the party stands for. Now, they passed the resolution, and for the last 20 years, all they have done is to speak about political education. They've never really been serious about it. So this is a case of the chickens coming home to roost. They are now effectively having to account for the sins they have committed, the sin of omission, of not being able to implement that political education. Because if they had done so, you have to look at it. If you're running a party as complex and as large as the African National Congress, they would be doing best to get example from how the US runs its Navy as well as the Marines. Now, if you have, in the case of the Navy, of course, there are systems and procedures that have to be followed to the latter. In the case of Marines, you got to be able to allow your people to take a judgment call. They can't take a judgment call on the ground unless they have been thoroughly indoctrinated, if I could put it that way, about what this party stands for. Now, because they haven't done that indoctrination, that's why for that reason people have got a misinterpretation. Even now we see even the top leadership disagreeing on what actually is the ANC, what it stands for. They are talking cross purposes. They are talking a multiplicity of voices that are diverse, and that is a result of them having not done that fundamental, which, as I've said it before, that even the LA Dodgers, which is a baseball team, in its more than 100 years of history, they never allow a player to go on the field unless that player has gone through some sort of education for 3 years, and the ANC has failed to do that. The chickens are coming home to roost.
Yeah, so now what informs the delegates that are put forward in a policy or elective conference process, if it's not because that member has been inducted, that member lives and breathes the values and ideologies of the party? Is it a sense of entitlement? Is it factions? Or what informs the list of delegates that are put forward?
I think in the absence of... Because I think I had a conversation somewhere earlier with someone and saying, so the problem currently is that politics is so much that there's a serious lack of morality. And I think the current SG once said politics should be a contestation of ideas. But then the opposite...
not a beauty contest.
Yes, a contestation of ideas. But now the problem is that politics has become actually a contestation for employment. You see, so much that when someone, you can see that the fight is not actually at the core of servicing the public. The contestation is at actually lining up your pocket. You see, so much that when people get in there, there's so much that is lacking in terms of servicing people, in terms of actually getting this country to grow in a certain direction. And
I mean, we speak generally because there are good cadres or,
yes, they are,
those that apply themselves based on the Owar Tambo spirit and they're through the eye of the needle. I don't know if any would pass. Let's just look at the Western Cape again, where some was saying, the leadership of Faiz Jacobs, I think it was 5 out of 6 who disagreed with his leadership. And, with him saying, look, it's a minority voice at the end of the day, majority rules. The electoral process, there were talks of a reform around how leadership is selected. Is this a conducive time to have that talk?
Well, I think that's more appropriate time that they should be having that talk, more so during this policy conference, and say, well, what is it that they will now do differently? As I say, they can look back 20 years and start to really realize that, in the 20 years, the membership of the party grew exponentially. And then we have seen a drastic reduction in the membership, even though the number of core voters of the ANC has not necessarily decreased. So there are a number of things administratively they have not been able to do well as the ANC. For example, you find that their membership management is not intact. Right now, there's question marks as to, well, how many members actually are active?
I think recorded was 1 million.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Western Cape, for example. How many members are there? How many members are here in Gauteng, which is the most populous province? And my own reading and assessment has been that Gauteng, for example, has got the least per capita ANC membership than all other provinces. And hence, really, Gauteng can say a lot of things, but they don't really carry as much weight. And that's why they resort to the mainstream media to convey their message. They don't have people on the ground. But Western Cape, on the other hand, you've got very few members, and a very large in terms of land mass. So to reach all those people and to get the ANC really working, they don't have people on the ground, else would have seen it in the membership numbers being that much higher. So even when it comes to the leaders that have been appointed, you find that now it becomes the minority elected by the minority to be able to lead the majority, and that itself, I think, is very challenging for the party. So certainly right now is a time for them to reflect. It's a strategic inflection point for the ANC overall. But I think if I was sitting in council and advising the ANC, and I'm not at the policy conference, I'm not a delegate, but if I was a delegate, I would have made an impassionate plea for them to say, you have to really adopt the strategies that have worked. And the Communist Party of China actually offers them ample case study that they can emulate to be able to be that much more effective. But on the issue of education, if they were to pass a resolution now or make a policy amendment, which will be constitutional, to say no one should be a member of the branch executive committee all the way up to the National Executive Committee unless otherwise they've been through the education system of the ANC, written an examination and passed with a minimum percentage, then you would be assured, because that will be what the quality test, that will be the tested and approved method for them and even for the general public and the voters, the electorate, to say, well, if that person is on the leadership of the ANC, I know what quality checks they've been through, therefore I can trust them.
But isn't it the same thing that happened? Yeah, it's the interpretation of the Constitution as well. We saw with Andile Longisa in terms of which position need you relinquish before you can ascend to another level of power. But can the ANC afford to go through the policy conference and let the dust settle post the elective conference, or do you think there's room to rectify and remedy what is wrong before December?
I don't think the ANC should look at whether they can do anything now and before December. The ANC has to be in the right place forever, not to say let us quickly fix this and then just for the purposes of the elective conference. The ANC need to actually have a discipline amongst itself. The leadership should be disciplined, because at times you cannot say you want to instill discipline amongst your children, say at home, and you tell people that no one should come here after 6. But you are exactly doing that. You are even drunk. You tell people not to be drunk, but you behave in a drunk way. So that is where the ANC is actually having it wrong. And what is becoming good so far that I've picked up is that at least there are some leaders that are actually now, because the ANC has been in denial that they don't have problems, but at least we have had a number of them saying we have problems and we need to sit down. So they should use the time that they have now to actually sort themselves out forever.
Yeah, but I mean, who's in leadership ultimately to either veto a list, or is the whole approach, the top-down from Luthuli House to branches and regions, not working? We saw the imposition in Tshwane and, you know, what cost Joburg and Nelson Mandela Bay, that once the branches have spoken, these are preferred candidates. Whatever reason, if they don't reach that or they don't attain the critical qualification for that post, needs to be communicated. So we don't see this disruption of gatherings, etc.
Look, leadership is influence, no more, no less. And you have to be able to lead people through influence, because you don't have the leverage. In some instances, you might think, listen, I have a leverage, I can remove you, because if I remove you from the position, there are certain perks that go with that position. But by and large, there are many more other ordinary people who would really participate in politics out of principle of ensuring that they can be able to protect the democracy, because after all, that's what I think, every person, so that we can have the values of freedom and everything else. But those that are in leadership, by and large, have to be able to lead by influence. If they can't influence anybody, that's where the risk is. And what we are seeing is that sometimes you find leadership that is detached. I'm just thinking aloud now that, for example, this region that has been disbanded, you would think that, with the analogy that I used earlier of the Marines as well as the Navy, is that those are the people, you would assume that they are the leaders that come from the ground, so they would know exactly what are the local issues there that could be incorporated in the policy conference, because also in terms of their processes is that policy conference, whatever that is not reduced to writing in this policy conference as a recommendation for ratification and adoption at the General Conference in December, well, you're going to have to wait for 5 years unless they go and convert the NGC into a General Conference, which they hardly ever going to do. So these are some of the things that is said. This instability at this point in time, it just means that probably the leadership here of the ANC, as is there currently, has lost a golden opportunity to be able to really be seized and to be informed about what are the issues that are affecting people at the regional level, at the local level that they can be incorporated into the national space, and in order to make the party to be more informed that it understands the issues that are facing the country that it has got the privilege of governing.
Do you think that they may be settling for now? As you're saying, the situation is quite tumultuous. They're settling on the fact that Western Cape has been, I mean, with all attempts that the ANC has made to try and regain power there, has become insurmountable, and that they're resting on the core voter base, you know, the machinery that come the critical hour. They know where to go door to door, and the numbers will certainly show up.
I'm not very sure, Cindy, but I think Cindy, the ANC, in terms of processes and systems, particularly how they elect and how people become, I mean, grow into their structures. I think the systems of the ANC are there. They can be strengthened here and there, but the greatest problem is actually at a leadership level, where when people get into positions of power, they start like behaving in a certain way that is contrary to the constitution, to the board of the ANC. Because, like, for example, you use the example of the spirit of O.R. Tambo. I mean, he was a good leader. He had all the ethics. But why are we not seeing another Oliver Tambo now?
Maybe it's something that the SGA had said, that it's, you know, certain people that come into the organization are not there for the best interests of the movement and the country, that it's there, it's opportunism and cronyism, as it were. Well,
it's really astonishing that how can you have a 105-year-old organization and a party, a political party, the oldest in the African continent, and have even its leadership having differing opinions on what it really stands for, what it should be pursuing. I think that for me is the biggest mystery. But it shows, for example, they'll speak about, you know, the leadership of O.R. Tambo or the leadership of Nelson Mandela and all that. But these leaders, by the way, when they got into office, when they were elected themselves now, the ANC already had been in existence for well over 40 years. So you have to be asking your question and say, but hold on a second. Now, really, if the ANC had been that long in existence when they themselves now got elected and assumed the leadership position that they did, how can now somebody come up as though that, well, there is an ANC of an O.R. Tambo or an ANC of Mandela, when in fact you are dealing here with an organization that has got a proud history? They should be feeling proud, but they should have taken a deliberate effort and invested resources to ensure that every single person who says that I am a member of the ANC, they fully understand how it is. For example, I mean, I don't know how they would put it, but I can give an example. You know, the Catholic Church, they are very good at doing a number of things, and they're not the only ones. I mean, a number of other churches, where they indoctrinate the people so that when they reach a particular age, they are not questioning what their own church stands for. So by the time a child is 12 years old, if they grew up in the Catholic Church, believe me, they know what it means to be Catholic. Now, here is the case that how can somebody be in the ANC for 10 years or 20 years, and today, being in leadership, still be differing with other colleagues on what the ANC stands for, and in that interpretation of what the ANC stands for, they end up making decisions that they are doing at the regional level, at the provincial level, which is now causing this confusion and is causing a lot, unfortunately just causing more pain for the party. So I think this is a party that they need to admit that they are in trouble. They need to make an SOS, save our souls, and maybe somebody, you know, during this conference will do so.
Yeah, but very lastly, Alwa, do you think that they're resting on that safety net, again, of the history, the liberation movement, the fact that, as Mwelezi Mbeki said, that, you know, you can't dethrone a president of the ANC through marches or in suburbia. The core of the ANC is at branch level. And do you think that they're resting more on that than what we see on the surface?
They could be, because the process is that, I mean, Sandy, we can't, as members of the public, there's nothing that we can do to the president. We can't elect him into office, we can't take him out. But generally speaking, the ANC in other areas, they are actually losing in terms of the national voter share. So that tells you that there's a problem. And going back to that province, the other issue that is there, I think that province has very deep inequalities. I mean, there's ethnicity there. There's issues of race. Look at Cape Town. Look at Guguletu. Look at your other locations. Look at I mean, there's so much that when people get into power, even the masses think that we should send our own from a certain ethnic group. It is only then that probably we can be recognized. So there's a whole lot of issues that the ANC should actually take down and try to address in that province.
All right, we're going to have plenty of time, of course, to talk about the policy conference. Coming up, we'll be live from Nazareth, just outside Soweto, come the 29th, which is this Thursday. But joining us in studio is Lionel Adendorff and Tsepo Khadima, political analyst. Much appreciated indeed. And you at home, thanks again for staying with us. We'll take a quick ad break. We'll see you just after this.